Where are the professional empowerers, the ones who feel passionate about showing up for others and helping women heal everything? You are listening to Tama, and I want to have a conversation about how being immersed in womb work has affected my religious views and my spirituality, my spiritual practice. And so go ahead and put in the comments, yes, Tamer, can we talk about it? I believe that there is a direct correlation between spirituality and womb work. I believe that the womb is so important to God, the supreme, true, and living God, that God would choose the womb to be the vessel to bring one of the greatest creations on the planet, human beings. Show me someone in the world who did not come through the womb. And so for me, you cannot do this work and not be spiritually rooted. Now, to give context to my perspective for those who don't know me well, I am an ordained interfaith minister. I grew up in the Seventh-day Adventist church. I went from Seventh-day Adventist to non-denominational to organic church to what I call my own wilderness experience to really honoring and living a lifestyle that acknowledges the omnipresence of God. And so God is everywhere all the time, whether you like where God resides or not. So I've been able to function in a variety of spaces and different cultural traditions and find God there and bring God and God's presence to the forefront through not living in boxes that try to tell people God is only over here, God is only over here. I just don't believe that. That's not my truth. And growing up from the modern Christian perspective, I had to do a lot of work around decolonizing my beliefs. I had to recognize what was true that I was taught and what was fabricated, what was designed to make me think a certain way about certain people, groups of people, and how they experience God. And so what's the intersection between that? Why do I give that context? Well, when I was having my wilderness experience, what actually activated that was womb work. I was reading Sacred Woman by Queen Afua. I was learning about the Kemetic wisdom around womb care. I was learning, and then I kind of, ran into the Ifa wisdom. I ran into shaman wisdom, Buddhist wisdom. And because I love to study, I don't love to be told what to do. And that has been problematic for spiritual spaces, whether Christian or non-Christian, that want to control and dictate what they think God's plan is for my life. I have no memory of not hearing God for myself. I started laying hands on people when I was 2 years old. By age 6, I had birthed my first organization, and I was on the block in my neighborhood empowering the children to say no to the drug dealers and all. I'm not a lost one. I came out of my mother's womb 10 pounds with something they call precocious puberty. My womb was active. They thought I was going to be in my menses by age 5 because of what my hormones were doing. So I came to work and reveal God's power through the womb. I know my assignment, and I have known it my entire life. So throughout my journey, I've had encounters with people where they want to tell me what to do, but if it doesn't match what God has already said, now we have a problem. Or now they interpret me as off path or not in alignment. And then when I really started stepping into my calling and becoming more and more visible in this space, and I had to face real adversities because I'm very ambitious and I dream very, very big. I have a big vision for this empire. Then I began to see the undercurrent and the energy of the ego, where people say, because you have adversity, you must not be with God. So anyway, I digress. I'll get back to that in a second. Because as I coach my students who are entering this industry space, I like them to be fortified. I like them to be aware of how to take care of their energy, how to take care of their clarity, how to take care of their vision, and not let other people's opinions about what they think they should be doing govern what they do next. So it was womb work that activated my wilderness experience, because when you discover that something you grew up with didn't give you all the information you needed to take the highest care of yourself, it bothers you. So I needed to separate from what was familiar to me to really define my truth. I needed to sort through all of the information. I needed to sort through the Bible. I didn't just exegete the scriptures. I exegeted, how do we get the scriptures that we have? How did we get this Bible? Who is King James? I had questions. And when I started asking those questions to mentors that I had, like my godmother was an evangelist, may she rest in peace. And I had people in my life. I was a daughter of my church. I've never been able to sit in any space and God not activate my leadership skills. Like, I am a born leader. And so when I would sit in my church and I would ask questions, I was side-eyed. I had a very active presence in the choir at my church. I was a daughter of my church. I did everything from the ushers, women's ministry, youth ministry, all the things. And I remember when I was reading Proverbs 8, listening to the Holy Mother describe herself as the architect at God's side at creation. And I'm like, God has a boo. Why aren't we talking about this in church? I was advised that we don't talk about that in church. So the conversation about the feminine aspects of God, I knew I was not going to have that at my church I grew up in. And I had to find the courage to take my journey to have that conversation in other spaces. And indigenous spirituality, that is where I found a more balanced and more broader conversation about not only the Holy Father, but the Holy Mother. And so womb work led me to that, because I, as a woman, started asking, whose image am I made in? Where's the body of knowledge and wisdom around what the women need? And then, as you ask those questions and you study these things and you learn about patriarchy, you learn about the suppression, the intentional suppression. When I say decolonize your doctrine, I'm not just talking about, as a Black American woman, what happened in terms of our ancestors' spiritual knowledge being oppressed and snatched away from them. I'm also talking about patriarchy and how there was a narrative created that intentionally wanted to devalue, remove, and not acknowledge the wisdom of the women of old. Decolonize. Why? Well, that's the research y'all got to do. That's a whole different conversation. That's a broader conversation that, if y'all want it, we can have it. Because the reality is, a lot of these different books and teachings can only contain the perspective of those who put them together and put them together the way that they did. The God that I believe in is bigger than all of that. And I don't like, and I was just having this conversation with one of the sisters in my Women's Circle of Empowerment, because we do our Sunday morning womb healing calls. It's an interfaith space where women are able to hear from other women and learn from other women the things of God and spirit, and set our intentions up for the week. And that it's our spiritual practice. A lot of the sisters in the community feel like that is their version of church. And so I was teaching on Isaiah 54 and Matthew 7 this past Sunday morning. And after my conversation with the ladies, I was talking to one of the sisters, and I said to her, I have never been one who liked religions and spiritual practices that have middlemen. I've never felt like I had to rely on somebody else telling me what God needs me to do or what I'm experiencing in my life. Most of the time when I participated in different things, it was to support. When I was connecting to certain elays and stuff, it was because I was supporting the sister that I watched who did believe in all of that stuff. Glow, and I wanted to lend my energy, my love, my resources to what I saw God was doing with her. But I have never been one of those people that's like, give me the confessional booth and let me, you know what I mean? Or give me this person because I can't hear from God without a reading, or I can't hear from God. And I didn't get this clarity until I deeply connected with my own womb. I remember at the beginning of my journey how I would sit inside of my body. I would ask my womb. This is how I learned the wisdom that the womb records everything. Some of the questions my pastor couldn't answer, my womb did. Some of the things that I couldn't reconcile when I was reading this chapter and this verse and its contradictions here and stuff like that, I was able to find God in my flesh. I was able to ask my womb to help me remember, why did I come here at such a time as this? And so that was my personal experience. Womb work took me deeper into my relationship with God. Not away from God, not off path. And I feel the need to be very clear about my personal journey because I want to model out loud what I've had to endure. It has been so frustrating being so clear for myself and being so close to God for myself. And then finding myself surrounded by people's skepticism, judgment, because they don't have the bandwidth to study and not rely on the truth that somebody handed to them. But womb work, the sacral chakra, the seat of creative power, the vessel that God decided to use to bridge spirit and flesh. A woman's womb is where human beings are made, not just their body, not just their skeletal system, not just their organs, their spirit merges. The light of God sparks from the moment that sperm enters the egg. God put his fingerprint and her fingerprint for creative power in the blueprint of the womb. And people have had the audacity to try to convince me or quote unquote teach me that my assignment is not of God. If you don't like what I'm doing, talk to God about it. I really don't care anymore. And I have created very strong boundaries around allowing people to infiltrate my assignment, my momentum, my clarity with their opinion and their skepticism and their infectious colonizer energy to come in because they don't understand what they're looking at and say you're not with God. For those that I see coming into this work in this space, and I see when they go viral online, I see when they're courageous enough to show the spiritual baths that we do because the herbs are for the healing of the nations. I see them using the things God made. Now, I watch other critics and skeptics use stuff that man made. I see people use things that God made, like crystal, salt. These are minerals. Some of the ignorance is so loud, I want to pop off. For real. And we use the things that God created, and because people don't understand it, they get on these podcasts, they get on YouTube, they get on pulpits, they get in little circles and stuff, and they sit here and they criticize, but they don't have the bandwidth to study for themselves and understand. Simply because it looks different, simply because it's unfamiliar and they don't understand it. And then you have the people like myself who have actually done the work of sitting with God and sorting through what we've learned, sorting through information, having no fear. Because I do believe that when you're aligned with spirit, it casts out fear. When you truly have a real relationship with God, you don't fearmonger and you're not governed by that. And the disrespect to the medicine women is loud and unnecessary, because guess what? When the body goes into crisis, when a woman is grieving because the doctors are saying she needs a hysterectomy, when a woman's marriage is falling apart, when she's not able to climax with her husband of over 20 years and she's losing her edges and her blood pressure, we are the ones that close the gap. We are the ones who have the body of knowledge that God gave on what herbs to use, what essential oils to use, what vibrational medicine will help. And you have the nerve to want to burn us at a stake and call us witches and paint this picture. Womb work activated me. It gave me a courage and a power to say, I don't give a damn about your opinion of me when I'm so clear about what God is doing through me. And womb workers show up even when we know we're in a room, we're amongst women who need the medicine and don't even know how to receive it and mischaracterize. So when you become a certified womb sauna practitioner, I don't just teach you the technical knowledge. It's easy to learn how to put herbs and water in a pot. But because I've been doing this work for a long time and I have a unique experience of being in different rooms amongst different people in different spaces, pulpits, festivals. I done did a lot. I've experienced a lot. I'm able to offer some wisdom and some perspective to how do I fully embody this work? How do I market? How do I brand? How do I tell the world who I am and what God has taught me through my relationship with my own womb? And how do I support women who come from different walks of life? I tell my students, just because you may have a particular spiritual belief doesn't mean that needs to show up in your sessions with your clients. You have to honor what people believe, because when they come and they sit on your pot, that is an act of faith. You need to understand. So even in our intake process, that's folded into, you got to understand. And because I'm an interfaith minister, I am able to add some perspective to my students that allows them to know how to speak the language of the people they are called to serve. If this woman is coming in and she's a Bible thumper, it does not matter what you think about the Bible. You are there to hold space and serve her. Because I live the Christ way. I don't just put on a banner. I know how to serve. I know how to bring love and support. One of the reasons that I recently decided to reclaim my ancient old, quote unquote, Christian ancestry is because I really rock with how Yeshua handled his movement and his assignment. I can relate. I deal with a lot of Sadducees and Pharisees who see me coming and they can see God on me. My gift is undeniable. The presence of the divine in my life, the testimonies I have, God is good. So that's not the question. The Sadducees and Pharisees in my life want to know, well, why does she express it that way? Why does she use these things? Why does she say that? Why does she come in the room and disrupt the energy? I can relate to Yeshua. That's why they wanted him on that cross, right? That's why they wanted to shut down. And when I was teaching on this Sunday's womb healing call, and I'm going to wrap up. When I was teaching on the call this week, I was talking about how, in Matthew 7, at the end of that chapter, it says that the people, when they heard Yeshua's teachings, that they were so moved by it because they could tell that he lived what he taught, and they could tell that none of the other religious teachers at that time were living what they were teaching. The real issue that some of these people have with me is that I am exactly what you see. Womb work exposes what is being created in a person's life. The womb records everything. DNA is like a USB storage, like an SD card. It holds information. Epigenetics has proven that. So womb workers have a very important assignment to help people be able to go into that portal and access the information that God has tucked away inside of their womb. The obsession that some people have with trying to misclassify that as demonic or not of God, take it up with the God that decided to use the womb to bring every human being to earth. I'm not going to argue with you, and I teach my students not to argue with the ignorance either. We're not going to do that. I've learned a lot about religion, spirituality, being connected to my own womb space, teaching women how to connect to their own womb space, how to pray over their wombs and talk to God about what they're dealing with their fibroids, talk to God about what they're dealing with in their marriages, talk to God about all of that happens in a womb sauna session to help women identify what kind of energy, spirits, and things that they've connected to that got trapped inside of their body that they need to expel and return back to its source, because you didn't realize when you laid with Boo Boo the Fool 15 years ago, because nobody taught you, because the wisdom of the ancient mothers was excluded from certain books. You don't know how to transmute energy. You don't know how the anatomy of your body is set up, and how, because your yoni goes in, you are the receiver, and you don't know what you took in, and you didn't know it was still there because nobody taught you about your design as a woman. That's where Tama and the womb sauna comes in. That's what we do. We empower women. And when my practitioners go out in the industry, in the marketplace, and they come up against all kinds of different things in this work, I'm there, and the tribe is there to be the soft place you can land when it gets a little rough. When you got, competitive mentalities out here in the marketplace, it says, oh, we over here do this and we do. It's already hard enough just trying to serve the women and make sure that we can keep their wombs in their body and it's not landing on surgical tables. What we don't need is people arguing over which crew, quote unquote, is more helpful and useful. All of us are helpful and useful. Whether you are a womb sauna practitioner or you got certified somewhere else, this work needs to be done, and it is important. And so I'm just bringing some of what I've learned and how womb work intersected with my religious views and my spiritual views and how I kind of landed where I am. I thank God that my experience of PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, woke me up spiritually. Relying on just my doctor's recommendations, relying on what they wanted to prescribe, that was not going to help me heal. It was going to suppress my discomfort, but it didn't heal my body. I have been given a mantle and a body of knowledge that helps women learn how to actually heal. And it is a process. It's not a one and done session. That's why we don't express yoni steaming in the trendy way. Oh, just come over here. This is about to be a party, girl, a good time. No, this is the womb saunas method is about transforming your life. We want to empower you to learn how to heal everything. Mind, body, spirit, which are all made in the womb. Women make brains, bodies, souls that then come out of her body into earth. And God designed that. So the next time, if there's any womb workers listening to this, any professional empowers that you empower women and you've been trying to find the courage and reconcile, like, why do people interpret my work and my assignment the way they interpret? Listen, they did the same thing with Yeshua. They did the same thing with some of the greatest teachers of old. It comes with the territory. So what's more important is that you properly support yourself, that you have a community, a tribe of people that can be the place you land and hold you when you step out into the marketplace in the world and they try to whip on you, right? We are here. We love each other. We support each other in this work. And it is work. It ain't for everybody. I've had some students that came into my training program and when they realized, like, oh, I thought I wanted to do what Tamer do, but I didn't know that was the cost of the oil. I ain't know that. They're like, God bless you, I'm gonna go do something else. And I don't feel no way about it because it's wisdom to be clear about what you are here to do and how to do it, right? That's wisdom. I would not be able to be who I am and create the results that I do with my clients if I did not know God and was not connected. People who have sat on my pot know that they have had a deeply spiritual experience. It's only the people who have not that don't understand what I do. So, with that being said, I hope that me sharing some of my experience and just my perspective helps somebody. And if you're listening and you are that somebody, please let me know. I'm very transparent and vulnerable, and that's intentional because I always feel like when I hit that record button, I'm talking to somebody. Like when I go live, I'm talking to somebody in the world. And I always ask God to use me to answer the questions that people are asking about what God needs them to be and do to have satisfaction and abundance and visibility and positive impact. I am looking for the women who are courageous enough to want to serve other women, and you don't want to do it by yourself. You don't want to do it in overwhelm. You don't want to be crushed by the work.